It's actually a huge paradox that living with your dream girl is actually killing the dream. I met a girl in Quebec. I instantaneously fell in love, and that was not the purpose of the trip whatsoever. I went to Quebec to fuck around, to be awesome, and then one of the first weeks I met this girl, and I was infatuated instantly, and I couldn't get her out of my head. And before this, like, I was productive as a fucking machine. I was a publishing house in myself. I wrote all the time.
Nothing. I didn't know where to go, so I simply went. When the others asked where to and why, I replied, no need, no destination.
Life here is not the same thing as back home. Back home, life is like, it's a walk in the fucking park, you know. Here you have to fight for it. You have to fight for everything. I'm a fucking immigrant. I'm working at a minimum wage job. It's not even adequate to actually, like, to pay the fucking rent. So at the end of the month, even though everything is beautiful, materially, I'm poor, but spiritually, I may be the richest man on the entire planet.
People tend to forget the voyage and only head for their designated destination, even though it's the voyage itself that defines who you are.
The beginning of my writing is due to three things, actually. I lived in France before, and I went back to Denmark and I didn't know what to do with my life. So, which led me into this huge identity crisis of who am I actually? And it was at approximately at the same time that my insomnia occurred. And when I finally, when I actually got to go to sleep and I actually slept, I had nightmares all the time. Every single morning that I have had a huge nightmare, for example, because it really impeded me in living life. I started just writing it down. And I wrote it down for like several months or something like that. And then all of a sudden one of my friends actually, she found my notebook and she said, "Alex, this is really beautiful."
A voyage-less goal, lose all ends. The mission lives, but the dream is dead. The paradox, though, is that a voyage with no end becomes the destination in itself and condemns man to live restless lives.
What is like the real true source of the drought that I'm in right now? Maybe the way that I'm thinking. Because I've always reckoned myself as being a relativist, you know, an existentialist. Like I'm inspired a lot by Kierkegaard, for example, or Sartre, or Camus, for example. But thus, when nothing makes sense, what makes sense in writing, for example? But then there is a paradox in it as well, because then when you want to express yourself about it not making sense, that makes it make sense. So on one hand, I feel super creative, but every single time I sit in front of this empty sheet of paper and have to fill it out, I feel like I'm obliged to actually make it worth it, because I can't even afford paper. So it has to be good what is getting down. But thus it's not making any sense, because like the universe is going to die at one point, and then everything we've ever done, ever achieved, ever obtained is going to be for nothing whatsoever. she's the most beautiful personality I've ever encountered. Of course I would be able to live without her, but I don't want to live without her. And that's why, even though that it might destroy the entire idea of actually, like, if I'm actually losing my source of writing, my source of inspiration, which is largely Copenhagen, Scandinavia, Denmark, everything nature, it's worth it. Even though that, like, being a writer, like, you have to sacrifice yourself. And maybe I'm not actually ready to sacrifice everything to become a writer. And it's killing me inside, because if you're not willing to sacrifice everything to become what you really want, then you shouldn't go for it. For the, like, at the moment I have a project going on where as well, like, my big dream is to get published on paper, and it's really hard to find a publishing house in our times that's actually willing to publish your texts, because book sales is going down. Like, everything is on the internet, everything is being downloaded today, and this magazine Videkorn is like keeping alive the old traditions, whereas I have to write them a letter with my texts. They won't accept any emails, they won't accept, like, scanned documents or anything. You have to write them handwritten or typewritten, and that's what I've been doing. I've actually been typewriting my poems so that I can be able to send them as a letter to Videkorn, so that they will hopefully one day be published.
I need to write, to live, to leave a trace. Maybe in the future some archaeologists find my texts and publish them as a testimony of a long-lost world. Feelings are universal, interesting and intriguing, even dangerous. They are what makes us, us. But what if I personally have none? Indifference will dig my grave of oblivion. Nothing bad. Everything is relative. There is yet no one to convict for the crimes of tomorrow. There is nothing to fray, only indifference. One feeling rests in me. Postscriptum. It's all relative and constructed. Nothing is natural. I don't care. We'll all end the same place.